Everyone, is Kimber, the study abroad specialist. I just wanted to do a follow-up video, as I mentioned in the video that I did about the Chevening Scholarship in the UK. I wanted to talk a bit more in detail about conditional acceptance versus unconditional, because as I mentioned in that video, in order to be eligible for the Chevening Scholarship, you do have to have unconditional acceptance to 3 different universities in the UK. And I just want to talk more about conditional versus unconditional because I've had questions about that on other videos that I've done, and I think it is important to talk through that. So with unconditional versus conditional, this particular term is primarily used in the UK, in Canada, in Australia. I know that here in the US, we do have something called conditional acceptance versus unconditional acceptance at the university level, sometimes at the private high school level as well. But a lot of times, ironically, in the US, since there are so many people applying for so many different things, you will either just get automatically waitlisted or you will just get automatically rejected. So there's not as much wiggle room in a lot of ways that there are in the UK or in other parts of the world, where with conditional and unconditional acceptance, I just want to point out off the bat that a conditional acceptance is not a bad thing. It just means that, again, as you would imagine, that you have some conditions on your acceptance before you are fully able to proceed. Of course, every single person wants to have an unconditional acceptance, and that is always the goal. I can personally say, I mean, for myself, when I was applying to grad school, I had over 25 unconditional acceptances to my graduate programs. I think that since I was coming from the US, maybe things were weighted a little bit differently because I didn't have to worry about an English exam or different things like that. But I know for a lot of people, particularly if you are applying to something that is very competitive, like Chevening, and you are coming from one of the countries that is within the Chevening territories, and you feel like there's already a lot stacked against you, that it can be very overwhelming to not only worry about the actual scholarship point, but just worrying about the actual program itself of getting in. And even if you are a student who you're not applying to Chevening, you don't even know what that is, maybe you haven't watched my video, definitely watch it. I'm going to link it right above. But you are just stressed about the fact of, I got conditional versus unconditional. I want you to start out by not worrying. I feel like there is definitely a stigma, as there often is when people don't get things outright. And I want to just start by saying there is nothing wrong with not having something outright. I have worked with quite a few students who have gotten conditional offers to schools in parts of the UK, in France, in Australia, and they've still gone on to do great things. So I want to just talk through really quickly what that actually means. So with unconditional offers, as you would imagine, it means that everything that you've done within the application process has worked out well for you. So you have the correct grades that you're going to need. You have the right type of recommendations. Those looked good. Your particular essay, that worked out well. And then everything you need is great. The other thing to kind of let you know about unconditional, though, is that even though you receive an unconditional offer, you are technically enrolled in the program, but until everything goes through, you're not officially in. So until you actually get that visa within your hand, until the application fee is paid, and then you can showcase that you can afford the rest of the program, that is not completely a sealed deal. So I just want to point that out, because I know that we're already dealing with the people who have the conditional offers, but just because you receive an unconditional offer, it means great, you've been passed to that final step. But you could get to the point where something goes wrong with your visa, and then you're still in the same boat or worse than someone with a conditional offer, or maybe you end up not having the funds that you need for whatever reason. So you just want to keep that in mind, that even though unconditional, you are further up the road than someone who has a conditional offer, that it doesn't mean that you are fully set yet until everything is in place for you to begin that program. What I like to say is, until you're in the seat the first day of class, then anything is potentially conditional, even if it says unconditional on that form, because there are so many different steps you still have to take as an international student to get to that point, or even as a student who is not international. Regardless, it doesn't matter necessarily of the status, because conditional and unconditional is not just for international students. But within the case of my particular line of work and what I do with study abroad students, and thinking about being unconditional or conditional, I just wanted to point that out, that until you are sitting in that seat the first day of class, then nothing, even if it says unconditional, does not come without conditions. So just keep that in mind. Now, for conditional offers, typically there are a couple of things that have gone wrong. So if you receive a conditional offer, as I said, it's still a good thing. It still means that you had enough of the other elements to get you forward to the point where they still want you to be able to come if you can clear up a couple things. So the first thing that you need to think about is that it could be that there's an issue with a couple of your grades. It may be that for the key elements of the course that you are applying to, there are certain grades that you're going to need to be able to achieve to get it. And so maybe you are in that weird space of being in your last semester and your last final grades have not come out. Maybe you had a hard time at the beginning of the year. You've gone through, you've gotten lots of support, lots of tutoring, and they need to be able to see that you've improved that. So maybe you indicated that in your particular personal statement that you were working on improving your grades and you were on the road there, but they have not seen that. And so they're like, okay, like this person has potential. We're going to go ahead and extend them a conditional offer and we'll see how it goes at the end of the particular grade level. So you could be in a situation like that. You could also be in a situation where maybe you've already made a bad grade or a couple bad grades somewhere and you are repeating the classes again. And so again, they believe in you, they believe that you're capable, but they want to see that you have improved. So there's students that fall within that category. There's also students that, for depending on whatever program you are going to be applying to or whatever you're going to need to do, your test scores are not where they need to be. So maybe if you are a student who you're just a British student and you're applying through the UCAS system, your particular A levels are not where they need to be. Maybe if you are an international student and you are applying to, I don't know, go to Australia or wherever and you need to take TOEFL, that one has not worked out for you. And so you're going to need to potentially take it again, or you're going to need to wait and reapply again. So those are the two things that typically sort of delay students either grades or testing. The other thing that happens, which is 1,000% out of your control, which is in a lot of ways unfair, is that there are sometimes some universities and some places around the world for education that last minute they change their requirements. This is really unfair, but it's something that you can't really help. And so maybe the particular grade level or grade point average or whatever their particular management system that they're using to judge what is important to them, maybe that's gone up by a point. And so when you were applying, you were totally within the particular scope of things, and now the criteria is totally changed. That is unfair, but that does happen sometimes. It doesn't happen that often, but that is another thing that could sort of get you a conditional offer, because in the middle of the game, they decide to change the rules, unfortunately, and you're in a situation where you can't do anything about it. But based on what you have on your application, now you are not as qualified as you would have been, a few months ago when things were what you thought when you had applied. So those are sort of the three common things, particularly with the grades and the testing. And then the last minute changes are going to be those last things that impact you. But what I would say is that with unconditional versus conditional is that, as I've been saying, like, don't feel bad about a conditional. This is just your opportunity to really be able to press forward. And especially if it's with grades that you know that you may be coming up to the last minute with what you got, give it everything that you have, whether it be doing extra credit or depending on where you live and what you're doing and where you're coming from, it's going to be different based on whatever type of school you're enrolled in. But this is still a good sign that the school believes in you enough to say that you have what it takes to be here. We want you to be here, but you're going to have to prove that you can actually do well with these actual grades. I know that a lot of schools as well have an opportunity to sort of take additional classes once you enroll, but that is usually at the undergrad level and not at the graduate level. So depending on whatever level you are applying to, maybe you are applying to a school at undergrad who has given you a conditional offer, but that means that once you get in, you're going to have to do some extra things. So they may have a specific dedicated program to people who got conditional offers so that they can show that you have what it takes. You're building up through additional assignments, or maybe you're doing different things with your particular department to show that you have the same rigor as a student who had an unconditional offer. So I don't want you to feel bad about getting a conditional offer, because you've still made it further than a lot of people who got outright rejected. But I know that it can feel very intimidating, and it also feels very depressing when maybe your friend right next to you, they got an unconditional offer and you're like, what did I do wrong? But there's still a chance for you to succeed in whatever program you're doing. So definitely, once you figure out what it was that triggered the conditional offer, likely the school is going to be able to list that for you. If they don't list it outright, they usually have a way for you to contact them, get in contact with them, figure out what it is so that you can go ahead and amend it and go ahead and get into the program that you want to get into. I hope that this was helpful for you. Definitely feel encouraged that even if you've gotten a conditional offer, you're still in the right running for where you want to be. And I know that you're going to do great things. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.